This is TWiT.
And I think, one of the other aspects of this that scares me sometimes about kind of the power and the influence part of all these companies is that they're doing it now because they can. They're really good at it. But I wonder how much thought is put into the long-term ramification of this. If we all buy into it, if we all, share, what is that point down the line that we realize, oh, maybe that was not a very good idea, and I wish we had not done that. And we're seeing little bits of that. Obviously, the Russian interference, the Senate hearings have wrapped up for this week, anyways. And I know that you were following this. Obviously, it ties right into a lot of what you write about in the book. Was there anything that surprised you about the testimony from Google, Twitter, and Facebook from that?
So the summary was, these are very smart people. They basically sent people they poured honey on them and sent them hunting for bears. You knew these guys were just going to get the crap kicked out of them. Yeah. And it didn't disappoint. They read them the Riot Act. But the general strategy was to kind of minimize, say, of our 100x content, less than 0.001 of this content was what we're referring to. And they use this kind of BS statement, we must do better, which is Latin for we want to be seen as acknowledging the problem, but we don't want to commit to actually fixing it. And in my view, in a crisis, there's only really, it's not the crisis that typically does the damage to the company itself. It's the response to the crisis that does the lasting harm. Martha Stewart didn't go to jail for insider trading. She went to jail for obstruction of justice or refusing to acknowledge that she had traded on insider information. And what you're seeing with Facebook, until just recently, is a slow-moving train wreck. And because they're seeing, the perception is it's a series of half denials and half truths. Just last week, Sheryl Sandberg says we're not a media company, which is a lie. She's a very inspiring, intelligent woman. And the definition of a media company is pretty much Facebook, a company that creates original content, a company that runs advertising against it, at 90-plus points of margin, a medium that uses reach to influence people and sell advertising. I mean, they literally define what it is to be a media company. And for them to refuse to acknowledge they're a media company, for them to try and minimize, for them to start off and say we're going to put 250 people against this thing, Mark Zuckerberg had an unbelievable opportunity here to go on camera and go gangster and say, I am not a global citizen, I'm an American citizen. What happened here is outrageous. I'm ashamed, I'm horrified, and I am personally committing to doing whatever is required at any cost to make sure this shit doesn't happen again. I am going gangster on anybody that tries to threaten our democracy, and he could have cauterized the problem. Instead, it was a series of half measures. Oh, wait, only 3 million impressions. Oh, no. 100 million impressions. Oh, wait, 137 million people were exposed to this content, and they've gone from 250 people to 1,000. They could hire 10,000 people, invest $500 million a year in artificial intelligence to help those 10,000 people identify, screen, and arrest controversial content and advertisers, and it would only dent their cash flow 5 or 10%. Instead, it's a series of half measures and anemic responses. This was an unbelievable opportunity missed and will go down as a case study in how not to handle a crisis.
And I mean, we did hear from Mark Zuckerberg, who, like you said, they didn't send the big wigs to this event, to the Senate hearings. They sent their lawyers I'm sure they had their reasons. Mark Zuckerberg did say that that it's going to be costly, but he said Facebook plans to tackle the issue at the expense of some of its profit. Do you believe him? Do you believe that companies are going to make the right changes that they need to in order to address this threat in light of what we know?
Yeah, I think they have to. Let me put it this way: they're getting to the right decisions and right actions. The shame is that it took them so long. Yeah. They're not going to get any credit for it, and the damage has been done. Right. A couple of things really struck me at the hearings. At the end, the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee basically said, you're our front lines. We really need your help here. And I just thought, well, what if you had big oil in front of them or big tobacco, or Ma Bell said, you're really important. We need your help. It's almost as if our government has said, we're old white guys and we don't get this stuff. We give up. We need your help. And for me, it was sort of the final acquiescence where basically they just folded and said, we don't get it. You do. We're at your mercy. Please help us. I mean, the questions I would have asked would have been a little bit more aggressive, and that is, if a company can be weaponized by an intelligence unit of the Russian government, and they can't guarantee to us here and now that it's going to stop, shouldn't we shut that firm down?
Right.
I mean, but we as a society are like, oh no, that's unthinkable. These are our innovators. These are our Jesus Christ. Well, I'll tell you what. My viewpoint is, if a company can't protect us from an adversary that is trying to sow chaos in our country, I think we should consider shutting the damn thing down. But none of them are talking that way.
And we can't be without our platform to share how we feel about things. Like, we can't possibly have our phone for anything else.
But look, if I just find this just crazy. Facebook lies to EU regulators and says it would be impossible. In the review of the WhatsApp acquisition, they say it would be impossible for us to share data between WhatsApp and the core platform Facebook. And the EU regulators approved the acquisition, and then, spoiler alert, 90 days post-acquisition, Facebook figures it out and starts sharing data between the largest messaging platform in the world and the largest social network in the world. And for good reason. Europeans are very, very sensitive about data and lists of people. They just don't, they have discomfort with that. So what do? They fine them $112 million, which is the equivalent of 0.6% of the acquisition price of $19 billion. So what we have told our elected officials to do, and be clear, it's our fault, we elected them, is to implicitly tell these companies that the shareholder-driven thing to do, the smart thing for Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Apple to do, is to lie. Because if they do lie, they get things approved, and if they get caught, they get the equivalent of a 25-cent parking ticket on a meter that costs $100 every 15 minutes. And they're not at fault. If you set up the incentive systems for companies to lie and be aggressive, they're going to lie and be aggressive. These companies aren't going to take care of you and me, Jason, when we get older. They're not concerned with the condition of our soul. You just talked about whether or not they're worried this is going to be a good thing for the planet in the next 10 years. I think they're good people who think that way in their own time with their own personal money and their own personal attributes. But every 90 days, analysts aren't asking them if they're improving the world. They're asking them what their earnings were.
Yep,
and
enough.
Every day they try and recruit and retain new employees. You know, I'd like to think that people at Facebook and Google really want to change the world. I think they're good people. But at the end of the day, people go to work to create economic security for them and their families. And the vast majority of compensation at these firms is through equity. And the way you get your equity price up is to sell more clicks, to sell more ads, and to sell more phones and sell more connections. And so the notion that we should expect them to think about the long-term ramifications of our society is naive and probably unrealistic. That's the job of the people we put in office. And to be blunt, they're not doing their damn jobs.